like I said, for anybody who's just joining in, we're going to be talking about all kinds of different topics from Lisa Marie's book, From Here to the Great Unknown. I don't think our conversation is not going to be limited, so we'll be talking about anything and everything. And I think a good idea to do also is if anybody listening in has different questions or just wants us to like talk about a certain topic, go ahead and like make a comment. I'll be looking at those and throwing them in there as we talk. And like I said, we do have questions keeping us on track, so hopefully things don't get too crazy. So I guess, so first things first, we all read the book, whether it was like hard copy, audiobooks. Some people did both, some people read it multiple times. So just giving a background for everybody's listening in, the first chapter of the book, she goes into her relationship with Elvis. I believe, do I remember all the chapter titles? Not necessarily, but I believe it was...
It was
upstairs at Graceland. So obviously she's talking a lot about her father, talking a lot about Graceland. So the first question I have, and a lot of people want to hear about Elvis and Lisa and what we have to say. So my first question is, Elvis and Lisa shared a deep connection. What do you think contributed to their closeness? Anybody want to start us off?
She was just a daddy's girl. I think from like the second she was born, that's what it was. Like Elvis was just so enamored with her and was like, oh my gosh, I have something that's mine, something that like Priscilla and I like created. And I think he just borderline, I mean, you're supposed to be obsessed with your children, you know? And I think that's where it started. It started like from the get-go.
I think he's also the fun parent, so you're always going to gravitate to the fun parent. I mean, he's the one that rents out the theme park for you where, you know, your mom is mothering.
Right.
Yeah.
So you said, oh, go ahead.
He was also the one who was the superstar that everybody treated like a superstar and waited on and catered to. So she got the message really early on, I'm sure, that he was the important one. And also, I got to believe that she picked up on Priscilla and Priscilla's sort of lack of intense desire to have Lisa exist. And so I think that there has to have been a sense of one of these people adores me. The other one, she's got some mixed feelings about me. I would think that's red. I don't know.
I really like.
Yeah. Go ahead, Diane.
I really liked the fact that, you know, you can't talk about Elvis and Lisa without talking about Elvis and Gladys. And I think he had such a connection with his mother that, of course, he was going to have. I think, of course, he was going to have kind of connection with the child. If I can't, like, I just want to read one little paragraph here in that first chapter where Lisa said, he loved me dearly and was totally devoted, 1000% there for me as much as he could be in spite of everyone around him. He gave me as much of himself as he possibly could, more than he could do anybody else. And I think like he was always concerned about, you know, are people here for me? Do they really love me? And he knew with his daughter, like that was somebody who like loved him unconditionally and didn't like want anything from him, like just wanted love. And so I think it was a special relationship that he couldn't have with anybody else.
All right. Well, I want to go back to what Alex was saying. I never really thought about that as reading it, that, you know, you do like, again, we'll be talking about different topics. But Lisa's saying in the first chapter that she got this feeling that she wasn't necessarily wanted a whole lot by her mother. And so having, I guess, that comparison, so you don't feel wanted or desired that much by your mother, so you're going to tend to gravitate towards your father, who obviously cared a lot about her. I know one of my favorite stories was when Lisa, I didn't know this prior to reading her book, but that she said she got her tonsils removed and she remembers Elvis going to the hospital with her. And I know she didn't really say a whole lot about Priscilla being there, but having her father there, seeing that he wanted to make sure that she was okay, feeling that want and desire to be loved. And I just never really thought about that. I don't know if anybody feels the same way.
It's about the parent that shows up.
But
can I be the, I want to say like, just be, when we look back at that time period in their life, there's all these videos of Lisa with Priscilla and Priscilla taking care of Lisa and showing videos and talking about how she would send care packages to Elvis while he was gone. And, you know, she was the primary parent while he was on tour and stuff. So I think it's not very fair to say that, you know, she wasn't there for her, because I mean, we have video of it, we have pictures, we have, you know, so that's how I see it.
I'm going to jump onto that because I agree with you, Kelsey. I think that there's actually a way in which Priscilla was trained almost to be somebody in the background rather than take the spotlight. And so I think that there's a way in which Lisa sort of perceived her as being a background character, but I don't think she was. I think she was a primary parent. She probably was there for the tonsil removal.
Right.
But she doesn't get the spotlight. And that was sort of the nature of the beast, right? She was living in a world in which everybody focused on Elvis. So Elvis's presence took up the space. And 100%. That's what her memory is. It's distorted in a way.
I just like on that, I'm just thinking in my own life, like with my divorced parents, that like I can recall the times that my dad came, but I can't recall all the times my mom came.
Right.
And I know that she came every time, you know, and I know that my dad came a select few number of times, and those were really special to me because he was there and because I didn't live with him most of the time.
Because it was rare and you remember.
It was more memorable. And that, you know, especially I think after like losing him when she was so young and they were so close, you kind of like are holding on to all of those memories as much as you can.
Right.
And I think it's very natural and normal that like if the parent who is like your primary parent, you're not going to remember every single thing that you've done with them. But like I remember very specific things of like my dad being the fun parent and that kind of stuff, and it being like me being a little bit of a brat when I would go back to my mom's, because I was like, it's really difficult to adjust to these two different, you know, parents who have different parenting styles. It's difficult for the kid, but it's also difficult for the parent to like, you know, they should communicate and should have dealt with that. You know, it's like, it's hard as the kid to navigate all of that. And I definitely think like I would remember my dad coming to a show more than I would remember my mom coming, like for sure.
Sorry, they talk about it so much. I mean, the fact that like when she was with Elvis, when Lisa was with Elvis, she got everything she wanted and anything she wanted. You know, it was a circus being there. And like, who wouldn't as a child want that? You know, you don't want structure. You want to stay up till 3 a.m. Be able to like take a pony into the house. Like you want to do stuff. And so also like that just kind of segues into that conversation of like Priscilla having to be the enforcer and like being the person who has to give her structure and give her, you know, like, you know, you have to go to school and now you have to do this. And like, of course she would gravitate towards Elvis. Of course she would. And Priscilla would.
I mean, everybody did. Everybody gravitated towards him.
Can I make on off of what Kelsey just said? It seems like, and this might be a little too woo-woo for like the first couple questions, but the thing that I found interesting was how Riley courts other people in the book, seeing Lisa just was different. And we know Elvis was just different. I think there are just people on this planet that like walk and live in a different vibration, a different energy. Like they had the same one. They were like on the same plane. And nobody could really understand that outside of them. And I think Elvis and Gladys probably had the same thing. But they just stood out from anyone else. And I think that made it hard for them to get close to anybody later. And in that same way, they never quite found that again, maybe with Ben. But yeah, I just think they were set apart.
Totally. I agree with you.
Totally. I do too. 100%. I think like we all said, like the combination of Priscilla was the enforcer, Elvis was laid back. He let you do whatever you want. Graceland, like Diane said, it was a circus. You were doing anything and everything there. And like Mandy said, they were on like the same wavelength. Me and Tessa, we talked about this when we were doing our podcast, the similarities that I guess Riley kind of drew between the two of them, which is, you know, you look at their temper, you look at their passions in life. And I feel like once you're on that same wavelength, kind of like Mandy said, what she found in Ben, I think that ultimately led to a lot of the closeness that they shared.
Well, one quote that we pulled out about like their closeness was that, you know, Lisa, if this is paraphrasing, but getting to the gist, that she says that she thought her dad could make it storm, that he could make the weather change. And then later on, Riley says about her mother that she thought real thunderbolts would appear if her mom thought about it hard enough. And then Benjamin's middle name was Storm. And, you know, all of these things that, you know, in that same intensity, like Mandy said, of personhood. And, you know, even from a little, when she was pretty young, she was feisty.
Yeah. Okay. And I'm going to keep us moving along so we get all these things covered. Just the next thing, keeping it a little bit fun. What was your favorite memory that Lisa Marie shared about her time with Elvis?
Oh my God. The one that Rusty put in the chat about how he got mad and then like she went to her room and then he came and saying, I can't help falling in love with the puppet. Like that is like the one thing, not the one thing, many things stood out to me in the book, but I think about that so much. Like the thought of him just like coming down to this like childlike level. Like he's this huge person, this huge energy, especially at that point. Like we're talking 70s Elvis here. Like, and then for him to come down on and just like with the puppet, and it just made me so happy. And I kind of wish that we got a little bit more moments like that. I know the book wasn't supposed to heavily be about Elvis at all, but I was like yearning for more of that. I was like, I like eat up anything that we get about him, especially him as a parent.
Right.
So I loved that moment so much. I'm so happy that she put that in there.
I love that too. I think that was also one of the things that I noticed that maybe bonded them was he was able to always stay in that childlike place with her. It was hard for him to be a disciplinarian. It was hard. He had to work on being like a father, but he was always there with her on that childlike level because that never, as we all know, never left him.
Yeah.
So maybe that's with her, he could really be his true self that was like always there inside.
I love that story about like Lisa had a rat or a mouse or something. He goes in to take care of it. I love that he didn't send a Memphis Mafia guy to take care of it. He's like, I'm doing it myself, and like closed the door and just has like screaming expletives, and no one went in to clean up the dead rat or anything, and it just stayed. He took care of it. That he didn't have somebody else do it. He took care of his own daughter and his own daughter.
Cursing all the while, which I think is hysterical.
So funny. Or what was it? The dog stealing the food.
Oh, the bacon.
Oh yeah.
God damn it.
Right.
Goddamn dog.
So funny.
I liked listening to the audible part where like Lisa was saying like no one says goddamn like someone like with a southern accent, and I like read it in my head like the way because like my mom's from the South, so I like read it like that voice. So I was just like goddamn.
It's so true. So true.
Oh yeah. All right. Shall we move on to our next topic now? I'm pretty sure this is all going to come up a little bit later too. Okay. So the next thing I wanted to talk about is, first two chapters cover, her time with Elvis. And so then we get to obviously his passing. How do you think Lisa's relationship with Elvis and his passing impacted her life moving forward?
She was traumatized.
Go ahead.
I'm just saying she was just grieved her entire life. Like, not that she was necessarily set up for failure in that aspect, but like she experienced and she saw firsthand death at 9 years old and then carried on her entire life. And then, I don't know.
She took on such a responsibility being the last living bloodline of him that, people put so much pressure on her from, you've heard it from the second she's born, and then he dies unexpectedly so young. And then, she doesn't really understand what is about to come of her life. And it's just a constant shadow that mountain she had to climb. But it's pressure. That's the main word.
I think what stuck with me so much from the book was when, Riley's talking about her mom driving. in the depths of her addiction, like driving down to Graceland to sleep in her dad's bed and sleep on his floor, you know, in the same vein that people would go to church and say, Jesus, help me. And like he was such a godlike figure to her that she would literally feel that way. But then also he was her dad. So it was both, like, he was just my dad, but he's also this huge thing. And I think that him passing just made that even, you know, more complicated, because how could that relationship and who she was, because of who her parents were, you know, Nepo baby, how could that not be complicated? Yeah. If she wanted to do anything, everyone was going to comment on it, you know, reflect it back. How did that sound? Her music, was that Elvis enough? Was it not Elvis? Why doesn't she sing Elvis songs? You know, that then they talk about that in the book too. Mm-hmm. Like, she was always going to be compared to him in every way. But at the same time, he's Elvis Presley and also her father, who passed away when she was 9 years old. So it's all of these different identities, and trying to hold all of those things, it's like overwhelming to think about. It's overwhelming. I can't imagine.
Yeah.
You know?
Well, I think
she's also, go ahead, sorry.
Oh, I think she also had, I mean, just as like losing her father, but I mean, she had this way of life for her first, you know, 9 years, like living in a castle basically, and getting whatever she wanted and anytime she wanted, and getting this, you know, this undying and like unconditional love from this man. And then in the blink of an eye, it's gone, you know? And I feel like she spent the rest of her life chasing that safety. Yeah. I feel like she felt so safe in that world. And you know, you see that like throughout the rest of the book, her chasing safety and love. And it's just something I think that she never found, even though she had it, like she had it in her children, and she had like that love and, you know, some of the men that she was with. But she couldn't find her way back. And it's like kind of what Tessa was talking about. Like, I just see that image of her going back and just like balling herself up on Elvis's bed or on the floor, just to like feel that and like feel that safety that she felt when she was there. I mean, it's so crazy to like go from that world and literally the next day you're in California with your mother, and you know, like having to have all this structure, and just your world completely changes. And I just think that's, I mean, it was trauma. It was just like severe trauma for her. So I think it was really tough for her, and it's something that she never recovered from.
Yeah. I don't know if any of you, maybe Jordan has, because she's a LMP fan, but there's an interview she did in the chapel a couple years ago. She's in the Red, and it was a Today Show interview as well, but it's like a 16-minute interview. And it's about how she was asked to do the duet. I'm blanking. What's the song? No, the big one. Oh, From Here the Great Unknown. Yeah. Whatever. And she said like she was reluctant to record it, and Joel was like really wanting her to do it. She listened to it, and she said it felt like his hand kind of came down and like pulled her up, because like I guess the lyrics at the time resonated. She was going through that nasty divorce and addiction and everything, and like her dad just like spoke to her in that moment, and that's what made her do that song. Fun fact.
The one you're talking about.
Yeah.
The word that comes to mind, and especially after reading the book, of the effect of that loss and that trauma and how it happened and how old she was and how big he was and how close they were, was just immeasurable. I don't think there is a scale that you could put how much that affected her. And it affected her in every aspect of her life, whether she wanted it to or not, as much as she tried to fight it or, you know, overcome it. It was always there. It always lived there. And it probably showed up in places she didn't quite expect it to. And I think it carried on into generations too. I think they'll all carry a little bit of piece of that, unfortunately. But yeah, it's immeasurable is the word I kept coming back to, especially after the book.
And kind of how like Tessa said, just like, I mean, sometimes like when we normally lose someone, we grieve and then we kind of move on from that and grow from that. But with her, it's constantly being put in her face for her whole entire life, to be talked about, like her father's passing and her father's legacy, and just she never like gets to really just like breathe and be herself. It's always like her dad is being in her, she, you know, she never gets to really heal
thing
from
about
that.
that too is the whole when Riley says about like her mom having to be mentally prepared if there was going to be an Elvis impersonator.
That was crazy to me.
And
I had
like,
never
Oh,
Yeah.
imagine seeing someone dressed up like your dead father. And not only that, you kind of have to be nice to them because you can't, like, seriously, like, because if you're a bitch to them, then, you know, Elvis's daughter is a bitch. So, like, there's that for sure. But also, like, how traumatizing, literally traumatizing that must be, re-traumatizing you.
Yeah.
All the time,
Inescapable.
and have to talk about it all the time and your grief all the time. And like you're saying, it's like a cut, like a wound that's never, ever,
Never.
ever
Yeah.
gonna heal. Which like it never was gonna heal, but it might have scarred over, you know?
Even in she does some interview and they ask her about the day he passed and she chokes up and she's probably like 30 or something, I think, in the interview. I mean, it's such a triggering moment for her and she's constantly having to like relive it. I can't even imagine like what
I mean,
that must feel like.
that you want to relive over
No.
and over and over again. Like,
when we go to Elvis Week, like we feel his presence, you know what I mean? Like when we go there, we feel his presence. Can you imagine like being her and going to those things, like being in that same situation of feeling his presence? I mean, it's a million times harder for her to be able to go to those things, go to those events and feel him. And, you know, like I can't imagine being her and doing that.
I don't feel like the closure was ever going to be fully done for her, though, too, because we're still mourning a death after so many years. I mean, we meet yearly to mourn over her own father. So I don't think there was ever going to be closure for her to kind of let that door close because people are coming to the house daily to mourn the death of her dad every single day.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It was
Which
a
we kind
shadow.
Yeah,
It was a
exactly.
shadow. And it was a big shadow. And I think Diane was right about the fact that there's a way in which safety and love, which we take for granted, are foundational. And she had those with her dad, and then she didn't have them. And she has to sort of navigate life without him. And on top of that, what Kelsey said about like, there's an ever present quality in reality. Like her day to day existence out in the world was constantly reminding her of this. So she didn't really have a break. There was no break. I mean, it sounds like she could remove herself a little bit and go off and escape here and there, but I think that the world was constantly letting her feel that unsafety, unloved feeling. And how do you go through life feeling okay if you don't have those feelings?
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, it kind of answered my next question, which was talking a little bit about Lisa's perspective of Elvis. So I guess we can kind of move on a little bit and talk about what kind of like the rub off for Riley. And so what was Riley's perspective of Elvis? I know we hear a little bit from the book of Riley saying that she used to be, you know, mad at Elvis because his passing impacted her so negatively and that she never really did get over the trauma. And like she said, you know, she would see her mother, you know, drunk in the bathroom, you know, listening to Elvis music and crying because she really never healed from that experience. So I don't know if anybody else's perspective is different, what you all have to say about that.
Riley gave, like, because she's doing like the book tours and stuff. I forget what show she was on, but they asked like, do you feel a closeness to Elvis? And she was like, yeah, I feel like close. I forget how she worded it, but it's like she doesn't feel as removed as we all think she does, because she was like, yeah, I never met him, but like when I go, like I felt the closeness of him like through my mom and like through, you know, like going to Graceland. So I think she has like a genuine like respect for him, and she doesn't view him as like Elvis Presley. She's like, that's my grandfather, and that's who he was.
Definitely like going off of the whole line where Riley says about, you know, singing Mom's Little Things of Assortment.
Yeah.
And saying that, you know, I'm singing that because my mom would sing that to me because her dad would sing that to her. So that, like, you know, she mothers my baby through me. And
Yeah.
I get the sense from the way she phrased it that, you know, that's coming right from Elvis, that she knows, and she always knew that is where that originated from. Not that it was like oh, I never knew that that's, how my mom and her dad spoke to each other. It was like, she knows that's how they spoke to each other. So it had to have been, I can't imagine, your mom telling you stories about your grandpa and your grandpa's literally Elvis. Like, it's crazy.
Yeah.
But just that, there was just a lovely idea of when she said, I've never lived in Memphis, but something inside of me has. And like, I just love that. I think that all of that, Memphis and Elvis, a lot of the times are similar, connected, synonymous with each other. So I think that she felt that closeness. And like you said, Jordan, like she said she felt that closeness, but I really got like, it didn't feel detached in the book, which I was expecting it to feel a bit more detached.
I mean, she named her daughter Below.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah. And I noticed she got a lot of criticism from people because she referred to Elvis as Elvis, in the book, and not instead of saying my grandfather. But, I think Elvis is such an entity. And so I think that when she does that, it's a great respect of how empowered he is and his name and everything like that. So I don't
also she calls her own dad Danny. So I feel like it's not because I was thinking the same thing and then I was noticing it. And
she kind of interchanged a little bit. It depended on like how she was telling the story.
Yeah.
Right. So I think it was kind of like
for clarity.
Yeah, I don't know, because at first I thought there was that detachment too, but then sometimes she says,
But no way was it a sign of disrespect.
No, not at all.
No.
I was gonna say my mother's father passed away before we were born, and we refer to him by his first name.
Yeah, I did the same thing. My mom's dad died when she was 14. Like, I don't call him grandpa. I call him your dad, or that's like to my mom, like your dad. But now, like other stuff happened, so I lovingly call him Grandpa Rich now.
And can I just add one more thing now that I was with Riley. I thought it was very interesting how his music did come into play and how it was written about and talked about by Lisa and by Riley, how it was never like listening to him was never a happy thing. It was never a joyous thing. They were never able to enjoy some of the happy, beautiful things he brought into the world. And I hope for Riley and like her kids that that's something that she's a generation away enough to be able to do, where it's just too hard for Lisa. And I think that's going to happen. I don't know. I hope that they can do that.
Yeah, it is. One thing I think a lot of people wanted us to talk about was the dynamic between Priscilla and Lisa. So I guess starting off, like we talked about, there's always two sides, I feel like, to every story. So first, what do you think contributed to the strained relationship between Priscilla and Lisa? And like I said, it kind of started very early on in Lisa's life, the strain. So are we thinking, things like her rebellion, Elvis's passing? Riley mentions, that the family has a history of young mothers. Is that something that we think played a role into it, or maybe it's something else?
I mean, I think that Priscilla was, yes, like whether she wanted to have Lisa or not, like she had her, And I think there are certain mothers that like they're different parenting styles. And I think that as we know of Priscilla, that she is kind of a colder person. My mom is like that. Like she's not a lovey-dovey, like give you big hugs and do all that stuff. Like Priscilla was not that way, but I think Priscilla did the best she could with the tools that she had in terms of trying to put her in school and get her to the right schools. And I'm not trying to get into the Scientology talk, but like she did what she could with a child that was acting out and really, upset and grieving over her dad. And I think that she just didn't know how to be warm with her own child. And, whether she learned that from her parents or which she probably did. But I just think she had difficulty with how to be a loving mother. And that is my personal opinion on it. But I think it was difficult for her.
Go ahead, Kelsey. No, I'll wait.
I was just gonna say, my mom and I are the same age difference as Priscilla and Lisa, and my mom had me at a very young age, and actually, was planning on giving me up for adoption when she was pregnant with me, and had the family at the hospital ready to take me, and at the last minute, she decided to keep me, and she couldn't give me up. So, and through that, she was so young, like trying to I mean, she's trying to figure out how to be a mom, and making mistakes. And, my grandparents didn't want her to do it. And, but I don't hold like, I don't hold it against them, it's just like sometimes these things happen. And I feel like, I don't know, I feel like she tried to do the best she could at that age. I mean, she was very young, and in such a weird lifestyle that I just, not saying that she didn't want Lisa, but just trying to, I don't know. I relate to not feeling like you're wanted, but then also with Priscilla just trying to be a mom. I don't know if that makes sense.
I think it's a very complicated situation.
Right.
A lot of layers to it. And some of the layers are kind of primal ones, which we had talked about earlier, which is that the thing that Elvis had, that Lisa and Elvis had, that sort of self-contained quality where they did what they liked and they felt what they felt and they expressed it freely. That's the polar opposite of who and how Priscilla is and always was. So Priscilla and her actual personality, separate from being Elvis's person, was a person who was very constricted and controlled and very, very careful. So all of that kind of stuff is the polar opposite of how Lisa was in the world and Elvis was in the world. And I do think that that's part of what Elvis was attracted to in Priscilla. She was so carefully crafted and maintained and managed by herself. Not saying that's a bad thing, it's just her quality. And I think that that came into play with her parenting style. Unfortunately, she had sort of a need to control and manage Lisa. And Lisa had a lot of reasons to not be in control, beside the fact that she was more like her dad. She was also sort of this kid who was going from a disciplined environment to a non-disciplined environment. And she was feeling very loved in that one that was the fun, playful one. And she was feeling very controlled and managed in the one that was not that. And you're right, she wasn't warm and fuzzy. Priscilla's still not warm and fuzzy. She's got a coolness to her. So how is Lisa gonna like
chilly?
Yeah.
Yep.
But they're poised. I would say that Riley and Priscilla have that in common. There's something very stoic and poised about them. And what that speaks to, if you think about who and what Lisa's like and Elvis is like, it's truly the opposite of who they were. They couldn't be anything other than who and how they were. They were not poised. They were not
They're
stoic.
all heart. Like they're all heart. And they're
Exactly.
like she's very like
exactly
in her head,
Exactly. So that was going to be a clash. Honestly, I don't know that personality style would have worked out no matter what. I think that the two of them would have clashed.
Right.
And then throw them into the most insane lifestyle anyone could ever imagine.
Right. With this,
Like, yeah. The fact that they were even still like speaking to each other at points in their life, I think speaks volumes. Yeah.
perfect.
Which is then I guess I'll jump around a little bit. It seems that, towards the end of the book, we get, I feel like, a little bit of a mending of the relationship, after Lisa's grown into adulthood, she's had her own kids. What are your guys' thoughts on that one? Like to the extent that she even wrote a song, dedicated for her mother.
Just about to bring up Raven.
Okay.
Like I remember listening to that song for the first time when I was like 13 or 14 years old. And like I didn't even have to like dig deep into it. I was like, because I was like a newly like Elvis, Lisa, Presley like fan. And I was like, this song has to be about Priscilla. And I was like listening to it every time I listened to it, probably for like a month straight. I listened to it every day and like, cried. So I was like, oh, that's so beautiful. Finally they made up, like, but not knowing the depths of like their whole relationship. But I think it's funny, like anytime like in the book, like Priscilla would be like, yeah, like listen to the song, like she like loved going to like her shows and listening to it. And like at the book tour, Priscilla was like, go home and listen to the song. It's my song. Like she's just so proud of it. Yeah, it was actually really cute.
And just like with age comes wisdom and understanding. And when you become a parent, you know, learn things and understand things more and relate to your mom more.
Yeah.
So I actually thought that part was really beautiful to like, you know, see them kind of understand each other more and forgive each other. And because they're both learning, you know, as they grow and I really enjoyed that chapter.
I also think that Lisa's addiction was something that kind of took the rug out from under her. And I think that in being in that position of vulnerability, it left her sort of recognizing who and what was still a stable source in her life for support. And we may think that Priscilla is chilly, but I gotta believe that she wasn't that cold when it came to Lisa's well-being and welfare. And when Lisa is struggling with addiction, she had to be in the mix, trying to be there for her in whatever way she could be. And Lisa probably felt that and needed it. So I gotta think that that whole phase, there was some forgiveness just in knowing that she had been sort of a mess. And her mom was there. I don't know, a little, I'd like to think.
Yeah. Okay. And then this is, oh, go ahead. Sorry.
I don't even know if it was relevant actually. I just know that like Navarone spent like a few weeks at Priscilla's to detox when he was going through it. And I think there was mention, correct me if I'm wrong, I don't know, of her maybe, I don't know. Did she stay with Priscilla at all? I don't remember. But I don't think, you know, she's that cold as far as obviously wanting your children the best for them and being there for them in that sense. And that's, I don't know. I told you it was even like I lost my train of thought.
I mean, she took care of Harper and Finley for a little bit.
Yeah.
During the divorce from Lockwood and stuff. So
she sold one of her houses and like her stuff to help pay for fees and
yeah. I mean, my perception on Priscilla has definitely been skewed from reading this book, but I'm trying to like navigate through it and understand because like I like Elisa, ride or die, no matter what. In my mind, she can do no wrong, but I'm trying to like look at it from like a human perspective on like both ends.
Right.
I thought it was interesting, and the part of this plays into what you said, Kels, like as she got older and as Lisa had different experiences, she noticed she was more like her mom in a lot of ways than she ever could have imagined.
Yeah.
Like I think she just saw dad and me are the same. Like this woman will never be on the same ground. Like
you don't want to be on the
same plane. Yeah, and all of a sudden, like she's doing the same things.
I think that comes with
happening.
age.
Yeah. So that's
age and maturity.
It's like you are all part of each other, you know?
Right.
And then you realize like, oh wow, this is my mom's first time living too.
Right.
Yeah.
Anytime I think about that, I'm like, oh yeah, that makes sense.
In that environment too. Like
exactly. Like that's
I can't even imagine.
Priscilla didn't grow up that way. Lisa did.
Right.
And Lisa re-momming at 40. Like she mommed at 20 and then re-mommed at 40 and went into addiction. And I just remember how against drugs and any, I mean, she mentioned it in the book too, but I mean, there's an old, the Diane interview, not with Michael Jackson, the one after it, you know, she's just like, it was just
in the cage.
Right. Yeah. And 7 years after Michael. And it's crazy that it caught me very off guard, that she fell into addiction so late, not because of her age, just that like it happened. And I know there's people in this chat that dealt with addiction before. And so it's hard for me to like relate and understand it, but I have lost people to it. And so it's just crazy that it can happen that easily and like you don't intend on it. And I think once that the twins came and the addiction happened, she completely became a different version of herself. and almost unrecognizable, not just because of the drugs, but just everything. I don't know. It started there, obviously. It started with a lot of things, Lockwood and all the stuff.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
Oh, that's
Um,
okay.
I don't mean to like jump ahead on you, Megan, but like I just love the fact that they, as like contentious as their relationship was and how like opposite, quote unquote, they were, they both fell in love with the same man, basically. Like Priscilla with
Okay.
Elvis and Michael. You know what I mean? Like they like when I'm totally jumping to this topic.
Thank
But
you for the
like,
segue. We needed
this
it.
is my favorite. This is my favorite, like the one thing I wanted to talk about. Like the fact that like I didn't get it. I didn't get the whole Michael thing at all. And then I like read the book and I was just like, of course she fell in love with Michael. Of course she did. Because like it was Elvis. It was Elvis. It was like this bigger than life person who, like, when you think about Priscilla's relationship with Elvis, you think about, you know, Elvis was in like a transitional time in his life. He needed somebody to confide in. He found Priscilla and she was there for him. And, you know, like it was the happiest time of her life. And like, then you think about Lisa with Michael and he was going through like the child sex stuff and like he was at a vulnerable time in his life and she was able to take care of him. And that's when she said she was the happiest she ever was taking care of Michael and just being in, you know, the bedroom with him and just like talking all night and him opening up to her. Like it was the exact same relationship basically. And like the fact that like that connection hadn't been made before, at least by me, I was just like, of course she would have fallen in love with Michael. And like, just so interesting that they had similar paths, like Michael and Elvis had similar paths. And like, that like she truly was in love with him. And I think it's because it was Elvis. So I don't know. I'm just segueing to a totally different topic.
No,
It's a great topic.
Yeah. I did see the similarities, and I think Lisa Marie she acknowledged that she was saying that there's a lot of similarities between Michael and Elvis. You know, one thing that she pointed out was like his worry, you know, that he was going to die the same way Elvis did. I'm just going to point out he had Neverland, Elvis had Graceland. Talking about the relationship Elvis and Priscilla, Lisa and Michael, I believe the age difference was the same as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's so many similarities there, like Diane was mentioning. Like I said, talking, and that's like when they first met, and she's talking about, okay, she would be like in his hotel room, and they would just be in the hotel room. They would just talk. There'd be nothing else. They would just be with each other, understanding each other. He was looking for that. I think she was looking for that as well at the time. I don't know if anybody else noticed those similarities, wanting to add on.
Yeah, they had trust in each other, which is what intimacy is. And that's what she had with Elvis. She had trust. She had faith in him. She believed he was her protector and that he was her safety. And so having that kind of raw, naked, sort of exposed thing with Michael enabled her to trust him and feel like he had her back. And I think that was really devastating for her, to have him sort of betray her by letting all the other stuff come in between them. And I think that was part of, honestly, I don't know this, but I'm guessing that that's where things started to slip for her a little bit emotionally, because I think that she had finally allowed herself to feel connected to somebody in a really trusting way. And I think that didn't work out. I don't know if she ever trusted anybody again after that. I don't know. Maybe. I don't know.
I mean, they always say that you fall in love with someone who is like your dad or like your mom. And I think but I think she definitely was like in love with the idea of Michael Jackson because he was so similar to Elvis.
Interestingly, I think too that he was like enamored by her, you know, and then the idea of who she was and what she represented, and like
I don't think for good reasons though.
No, I don't. I please personally, I don't even want to go there. But just Michael, like whatever. Okay, so I'm just not into that. And whatever. But I think that for me, that's what was sad about it. It was very reminiscent. I know Megan, like later in the notes, I think it was very reminiscent of this like betrayal by that first boyfriend of selling the pictures. I think that it was like he didn't do anything overtly. Like there was one incident we can pinpoint and then it stopped working. It was just like, if you have a seed of doubt in your head that like maybe he's using me because of who my father was, or not using me, but wants me to have his children because of who my father was.
Could you imagine
that seed of doubt? Take it out
your entire life, and you're thinking like, well, and same Elvis kind of had the same thing. Are they with me because of me, or are they with me because I'm Elvis? Like, and
But
I can't imagine.
He knew not to do it.
Right.
Yeah.
She knew not to do it.
And I just, that would be like so hard. Just like, oh, are you with me because you really like me, or I don't know. Oh,
That was
such a huge insecurity to have. Like, I can't imagine.
But
go ahead. Sorry.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say that there's also a way in which they both were kind of people that were trapped in a bubble in time. And Elvis had that, Michael had that, and even Lisa had that. When they are this sort of juvenile person in a way, emotionally, because of the kind of life that they've led, there is a way in which they're kindred spirits, sort of hiding away from the world. And I think that was really helpful for Lisa to discover that somebody else existed out there that was like her, or understood her, or felt like her, and adored her. I think that adoration is key. I think that was really important for her. And I honestly, that was where I had to stop reading for a while. I was most hurt for her then. There's a lot of pain points, but I had to put the book down for at least 2 weeks. I couldn't deal. It was just, I felt so bad because she really did deserve to have love.
And I feel like I just like going back to the relationships of like Priscilla and Lisa. It's just so interesting that how much they wanted to care for, their spouse. Like they really wanted to be the person that they could come to. Elvis could come to Priscilla, and Michael could come to Lisa. And it's just so interesting, like that they were like, I'm losing my train of thought. I'm trying to catch up to it. That they were such caregivers, like, but interesting. I'm not trying to like egg on what's going on in the comments, but like the Priscilla, that didn't translate to the taking care of, like being loving towards her child. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. Like they were just so similar, and that's how they wanted their relationships to go, is that they wanted to take care and they wanted to be a nurturer to this person. And they were just chasing that kind of their whole lives. And so I'm just interested that they never like made that connection. Maybe they did. Maybe they made that connection between them. But I also think it's so interesting that like how much Priscilla hated Michael. I wonder if there was any of that recognition of Elvis in him, and like was like, this is not good for you. You shouldn't be in this relationship.
I think she was
I just wonder if
protective over her.
For a change.
Like,
Is Kristen still here? I'd love to hear your take, Kristen, on Michael, and if the book shed any different light on their relationship than you had already thought.
Kristen as in me?
Yeah.
I'm sorry, what was your question, Mandy?
Did the book shed any new like light or information as far as like her and Michael's relationship than what you had seen it as?
No. She was very bitter at like let's say 7 years after the fact. And then when he died, she had a bunch of clarity of what he was about, and what that whole relationship was. And I think she mourned him after the fact the same way as her father. I think it hit her really, really hard. And I think she just felt like some sort of connection with him. But yeah, she was bitter for a while, and he got Debbie pregnant like right away, and that really, really hurt her. And if you listen to on Storm and Grace, I always blank when I'm on the spot. Jordan, help me. There's a song about like I can't even think of a lyric.
Is it
like,
over me?
I mean, look, I'm the biggest fan, and I can't think of it. Goddamn it.
Is it over me? It's like, yeah, she's
Give me
cool in
one
her
line.
gab tooth hippie chick way, right?
No.
Okay, because I was
No.
about her.
No, but it's just like, oh, I don't know. I gotta look up a lyric, but it's basically like you know, you want her, go with her, you know, it definitely hurt her. That's what that song is about. But there also is the song on Storm and Grace, It Was All a Dream. That's about him.
Yeah.
And there's
very much Michael Jackson, like
there's a lot on the verse too about him too, yeah. But they're more like bitter. But yeah, then Storm and Grace is like the clarity of it all. Yeah.
Because she found out that he passed away while she was in the studio making that album.
Oh.
I'm gonna look up that lyric now.
Which
I guess
do you guys, some of you are old enough to remember, like when they were dating and everyone just thought it was the weirdest, wildest
Oh my
thing.
God.
I remember watching the kiss on the MTV Awards.
Yes.
But then it's like, I mean, it was crazy. And then once I started to like learn about Elvis, I was like, oh, yeah.
That makes sense.
Of course. Like,
Living
you seemed
the
totally
music
normal
video.
after that.
She's in You Are Not Alone. She was in the music video with him.
Right.
Oh,
Living
they were
through
naked.
that
Yeah.
was such an experience. It was such an experience living through that. Everybody was just like, wait, what? Like heads exploding. It was
I knew
such
nothing
a
about
weird-
her. I just knew that was Elvis's daughter. Like my mom gave a crap. Like I was too young. I mean, now I'm about to be 42, but I mean, still at the time I was young, and I just remember it was a huge deal. I just remember like she was so pretty. I just remember thinking she's so pretty and
It looks amazing then. Yeah.
That music video she was in, I was just like, oh my God.
She's gorgeous. And he always just freaked me out because he reminds me of like a clown or something.
Yeah, they got married like literally like
Thriller, Michael.
like a month before I was born.
Era.
Oh, I feel old, Jordan. Stop.
Talk about how she trapped is it Danny into
I was gonna say, like talking a little bit about the other husbands, you know, the report poor. Yeah, that was something that did surprise me talking about Danny, like the whole kind of, I guess you could call it entrapment. The nice planning, I guess you could say.
Family.
Yeah.
it was deceit.
That shocked me. I didn't know that. And when I read that, I was like, oh, because I am a Danny #1. Like,
Oh yeah.
I love him.
How can anybody not?
Right.
I just think he was like, I mean, like Riley said it, like my father was my mother's like #1 protector. Like he was like her father, her brother, her husband, her lover, her everything.
She says Lisa calls him a different kind of soulmate. You know, the word.
Yeah,
that's what it was.
In no fucking way, but we were a different kind of soulmate, and it's like, I think
Yeah,
that.
were we gonna stay married? That one.
Yeah. It's
Cracks
like
me up.
I love that she's like no, but
No.
we had a connection that
And that he
felt that conviction to want to have his child. It is a little crazy work when you think about it. Like, it is definitely like, but I mean, you know, it all happens.
but look at like who he is. Like she chose correctly. Like
Yeah.
a great father, a great, you know, like friend. Like the fact that he always lived where she was, like in the guest house, like, or the pool house, whatever, like on the property. He was Lockwood's like best man at their wedding
Yeah.
or something. Like he was just always there. And it's like I come from divorced parents, and it's like that is like the best case scenario.
Right.
And everything. Like you want to see your parents like still be friendly with each other. You don't want your parents hating each other.
And do you also like it reminded me of kind of how Priscilla and Elvis were after the divorce, how they tried really hard to just like keep the family dynamic, and Lisa's talked about like not even knowing that they were divorced. And I always think about like, had he not passed away, like what that would have looked like down the road, and would have been like a similar thing where, you know, they were just there to support each other and be there for each other. And I just loved how Danny kind of took over and was like there for her always, no matter what. And I just thought that was so beautiful. the relationship that they had, even though, you know, all the things that they went through.
Yeah.
There's a little part of me that would like to believe that like Elvis sent him to her. Like he knew she couldn't be tamed. He knew she was never gonna, you know, have a 9 to 5 or a picket fence and a husband and 3 kids, but he knew she needed a rock once he was gone. And I think he filled the role like more than anybody could ever have expected anyone to.
But then
Right.
imagine
beautifully.
being Danny and Lisa goes, I'm leaving you for Michael Jackson. I would be
Yeah,
like,
he's like, all right, go ahead.
Like, do your thing.
huh? Like, do you have to have a deep love for someone that's
Right.
beyond romantic?
If you love him, let him go.
If
And
someone
to
came to
truly
me and
know
said,
each other.
yeah,
Like to
and
truly
for
know
them,
who the other person is.
yeah,
And
then
respect that on
they
both
stayed.
sides.
Yeah, that they
Even
stayed in
though
his life.
It's so also Tessa's bringing that up. It's kind of like also wonderful that even though Lisa Marie did leave him for Michael, that all through those years he still decided, you know, I'm going to stick around. We might not be like husband and wife. We're just going to be friends, and I'm still going to be here, support you. And like Tessa said, they're just special soulmates. They were different kind of soulmates.
Yeah.
He was literally there till the end, which I think is so beautiful too, in a way, because he was I mean, he was there, he to find her and help her, and like he never left her. I just think that's so beautiful. You know.
Agree.
And
And
I
he
think he's
also
like a cool dude.
Are you
Yeah,
okay,
he-
Jordan?
Going back, I Was Wrong was the song about Michael and also Just a Dream, because he did come to her. She said the story, he did like kind of come to her in her dreams. This is after he passed. But I Was Wrong is about like she was wrong about everything she thought about him when she was married to him. Like, you know, she had a misconception of what he, I guess my perception is like that he was actually really in love with her, and she didn't really believe it until after the fact. So I Was Wrong is also about MJ.
And I would say that not Michael. Whoa, that's a really funny slip to have made. Okay. I was going to say that Danny is really probably the only experience other than Elvis that Lisa had of unconditional love. I don't know if that's true. I would like to think her kids also offered that, but with kids, it's a little different.
Right.
That dynamic is not quite there. But with Danny, it sounded like he really was able or capable of offering what true love was, like real love, unconditional love.
Unconditional.
And I'm so glad she had him.
Right.
Like,
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
It makes me think of that poem that the book starts out with, that the bluebird thing.
Yep.
Like the saddest thing. But like when I think Kelsey was saying, like when Michael was with her and she was trying to figure out if somebody was with her because she was Elvis's daughter or if they were really with her. And so she felt like she was really guarded her whole life. And like, just, I don't know. I just think of that poem so often because it's like, she was so guarded and she had this like bluebird in her. And like, how often did she let that go in relationships, you know? Like, I feel like but when you say like Danny was her soulmate, like I feel like she really only let that out fully with Michael though, like because that's when she talks about she was the happiest, you know what I mean? Like I don't know, that's just like what I took away from the book. Y'all can totally disagree with me, but like I think that's the only time like that I thought that she really like let that little bluebird out.
I think she was kid-like with him, probably. With Michael, it was more like euphoria, the high of being chosen, just like Priscilla had with Elvis. Like she was the one. And I think that Lisa had that kind of high specialness, like that feeling of like she was it. She had him, and she had him really, like he was totally engaged with her, like offering secrets, all that. But I think with Danny, he saw behind all the facades, whatever facades she had to have and whatever guard she had up. I mean, like he couldn't have been around and been with her for that many years and in that many circumstances without knowing and loving her for exactly who she was. And I think the bluebird was released sometimes. I think it was out there because people could tell she had that spirit like Elvis, you know, that rawness.
Maybe she also thought like that love was supposed to be big and it was supposed to be grandiose because that's what Elvis
He did. Yeah.
and, like it took a very long time to figure it out that it was supposed to be like what Danny was giving her.
It was supposed to be comfortable and easy. I think she
Safe.
wanted it to be what it felt with, and safe, you're right, but she wanted it to be with you know, with Nicolas Cage, and like with Michael's like big and dramatic and like just a whole huge like, you know, Riley says she always liked when there was something going on with the weather. Like she didn't like for there to be a clear blue sky. She wanted there to be like a hurricane or storm, or a storm's about to happen. And I think in her relationships, it felt like that was similarly what she looked for, but maybe not necessarily what she needed.
Intensity. She sought intensity. Yes. But I think she was intense. I think Elvis was intense. I think the two of them were intense.
I think Lisa was. Sorry,
No,
I just said fierce.
Go.
Lisa was also like a dark person. Like she had a painting made of blood, like her friend's blood in her house. Like so, like wanting the weather like that wouldn't surprise me. But the song about Debbie Rowe is called Over Me. It's on Storm and Grace, and so like she was bitter because she wouldn't give Michael a baby, and so he turned around and Debbie Rowe would. And so if you read the lyrics to that, that's pertaining to that. Okay, go ahead, whoever.
No, my favorite part of that, when he was like, Debbie Rowe will have my kid. She goes, fuck Debbie Rowe then.
Yeah.
And
Go ahead.
Yeah.
Well, I don't know as much about like her music. And like you guys like
Jordan
y'all are in on that. So
Yeah, can we get a playlist?
yeah.
What you want to know? I'm an encyclopedia of this woman.
You know, I'm like, so how much of her music was, you know, like her real life, and how much did she let people in that way?
Literally.
Well, I mean, yeah, she wrote it all. Yeah, she wrote it all. I mean, she co-wrote with like, you know,
Dirty Laundry was like the only cover she did.
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
was gonna say, from like a, you know, I think Megan and I talked about it on the podcast, like I'm a music person too. So I was listening to Lisa's stuff, and I felt like that was such, you know, before she had the book or the memoir, like that was the way she could tell her story. And she had a gift with words in a way that actually Elvis did not, you know, in terms of
Right.
write songs. Like he had a phenomenal voice, and that's what he had. But that's not what she had, something different, you know. I'm not like, she wasn't copying him in that, because he didn't sit down and pour his heart out in lyrics, and she could, and she did. And I think that's really interesting. Like people always wanted to compare her music to her dad's, but actually diametrically opposed.
Yeah.
Like, it's totally different.
She's like alternative. Yeah. She's like alternative pop, like dark stuff. There's a song, Jordan help me, can't think, but it's a song basically like you don't talk like him, you don't sound like him, troublemaker.
Sticks and Stones.
Well, yeah. I'm mixing two songs. No, you're right. Sticks and Stones. It's like, too bad she's not like her dad. She doesn't, you know, you had a silver spoon your whole life.
Yeah.
Blah, blah, blah. That's all you have is your name. That song is pretty telling of that stuff of her perspective of always being compared to him and just wanting to be her.
It doesn't. Doesn't the book talk about like she had like a different voice though, that like they didn't want her?
Well, they said, and I didn't know this, Lights Out, they made it more country to like pertain like to Elvis fans. And I'm like, God, I want to listen to the original recording. Like I want to know what it actually was supposed to sound like, because Riley was like, I like that version better.
I have a question. Anybody, I'm not good with math. Why does she say I keep my watch 2 hours behind?
I wonder that.
I said that earlier.
2 hours behind California.
I think about that all the time.
I think it's
too hot.
for us in Arizona. It'd be Memphis time.
It's ahead.
It's ahead.
Florida.
Oh, she keeps it ahead.
I'm in Florida. It's 1 hour behind.
Yeah, you're right.
I'm in Central Time, which is Memphis, and then California is 2 hours behind us. Or sorry, 2 hours. Yeah, 2 hours behind us.
Yeah.
So if she's in California, keeping it 2 hours. Was it behind or ahead?
Behind.
The lyric is 2 hours behind.
So she's in California, based out of California. I guess keeping it 2 hours behind would be Memphis time.
Memphis.
I think it depends on the geographical location.
But she's behind.
She's behind.
Yeah.
So we just call her
Maybe in New York at the time, because New York is 2 hours.
No. East Coast were 1 hour.
It would be either California or Arizona for the 2 hours.
Right, the 2 hours
I just
Arizona and
like
Memphis are 2
LA
hours.
and Memphis. Like I just assumed it was like Memphis and LA.
Yeah.
But it's Too
It
intense.
depends on if it's daylight
I
savings.
really have wondered that for like 20 years.
I
Why?
think this all the time.
20 years, I don't
think
know.
about this often. This haunts me. Okay, like it really does.
Tessa,
I'm going
your
on
brain is turning
22,
over
like
there.
22 years, Skyllar, and I'm like, I don't get this lyric.
Can I just say though
Go ahead.
that I haven't listened to Lisa's music, but I really want to listen to it because now that I know that she's written most of her songs, because I feel like Elvis, like even though he didn't write his songs, he sang songs that he was feeling, and you can he was telling his story through his music. You know what he's feeling, and you know what he's going through. Like especially in the 70s, like you want to cry because you feel. And so I would love to like understand Lisa through her music that way as well. Like I just never
It's
have.
angry,
So
dark. It's awesome.
Yeah.
Did we
This is something that. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Mandy.
Sorry. Do we know, like, when she talks about her demos, Aretha Franklin? Is that am I
Yes.
right about that?
Yep.
Has that ever been like leaked?
No,
I would kill to hear.
I
that.
would too.
I
When
would too.
I found that out, man.
You
I was
hear
like,
you
where is
hear
it?
clips of it. They're on specials. Like I can pull it up. Like you'll hear like a
Really?
clip of it. Like on I think it's I'll fucking pull it up.
That I loved hearing about that. I loved hearing about her taking like hip hop class and listening to Britney Spears.
And
I
teaching
saw
Riley's
her,
friends the dances.
I would never like see her doing either of those things. And I love
right.
that.
Yeah.
Like
You know,
if
going
you
back
guys
to
go
what-
on YouTube,
Oh,
all
girl
that's
sent me
my
that. Hit me
videos.
with that.
set up.
Ooh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Those are all
wow.
mine.
I feel like I've
That-
listened to a little bit, but I would love to like deep dive like you guys have done with like the lyrics and now knowing like more of her timeline
Yeah.
of her life.
Right.
Correct. And kind of
Yeah.
like going back to what Kelsey was saying, this is something that me and Tessa talk a lot about because Tessa's background is in music. So you can definitely hear like what Kelsey was saying. What Elvis, I think, was really expressing, talking specifically about the 70s, like when he was really resonating with the song, you would hear it. You look at the movies, it wasn't really all in, so you can't really hear it. With Lisa Marie, I think you don't hear it as much as when you're reading the lyrics, you can understand what she was going through in the different phases of her life. And like me and Tessa were like dissecting the lyrics, talking about either Elvis, talking about her mom, Scientology, her kids. So I think music in that way aided her, where she was able to express her ideas, her opinions before the memoir. But then I forgot who said it, I think it was Jordan, talking about making a little bit more country. I feel like in some ways, music also was a bit of a hindrance for her, either kind of the restrictions that she had on her music from, whatever it was production, or just feeling, I guess, the immense pressure, like we talked about earlier, going on tour and you're seeing somebody dress up as your dead father in the crowd. I feel like it also could be a hindrance in that way. I don't know if anybody else saw music as a hindrance as well sometimes.
For
She
her?
was-
For her.
Well, yeah, absolutely. But I mean, I think also like it's just innate in her blood. Like she wanted to do it. It's just like
Yeah.
you got to really mentally be prepared for what's about to happen.
When you see that interview with her and Michael, and I think Diane Sawyer asks her about music, and she's like, she talks about saying, but she's very like self-conscious about it because she's always going to be compared to her dad, and I can't even imagine, wanting to express yourself in that way, but then knowing that you're always going to be compared to this person that you can't compare, nobody can compare to, but I'm so proud that she still did it and still went through it. And
she said she'd be the prototype for like all the celebrity kids that wanted to do it. She's like, I'll be the prototype and see what happens. And it sucks because I wish Riley would sing, but she also has the same thing as Elvis where she doesn't write, but it's like, okay, but like still let's hear your voice because it's really good. Like
She's a performer for sure.
oh my God, I want to hear Riley sing so bad. Like just
mm-hmm.
One of the things that I think. Oh, sorry. Go ahead, Diane.
I was just gonna say she did sing in Daisy Jones and the Six.
no, I know, but I mean like
but she won't make
it's something that did her. I want her to do more.
She
she
might.
won't make her.
Okay.
I mean, the thing that's funny about Elvis and Lisa is that they're both incredibly inhibited and shy people and really self-conscious. And that combined combination with their sort of inability to sort of restrict themselves or not be themselves means that they were sort of always expressing themselves freely and openly while also simultaneously being incredibly self-conscious and self-aware. That's a very weird dynamic to live with.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Insecure.
I saw like something that like Priscilla, I think, said that like Elvis always had stage fright, no matter what. He'd been doing this for, 20 something years. But every time before like a concert, he was just kind of sweat it out and then go on there. And then like, yeah, like Lisa too, like not necessarily stage fright, but like you can see with like her body language, like how uncomfortable she is in front of like everybody, because she knows if she says something just off a little bit, she's gonna get judged for it.
Right. Always
It's
have to be
almost
on
like
guard.
Yeah,
almost
like
like a little bit like imposter syndrome, but they're like the least imposter
Right.
Yeah.
Should be the last person to have it.
Guys, I've been spiraling about this 2 hours behind question. Like, I just wanted to, I've been sitting here like,
Yeah, I looked
like,
Yeah. Diane
welcome to my
found
life.
it. Diane found it. It was a really cool answer. I love that.
But I feel like, no, I feel like that can't be, AI can't be correct on that, because I feel like I just don't, because she talked about keeping her watch on Memphis time, but then why would she say 2 hours behind if it's 2 hours behind? That's just really driving me up.
maybe that's just how the lyrics fit.
Yeah, but everybody's like, oh, she talks about keeping her watch on Memphis time in the song, and she says 2 hours behind, but it doesn't make any sense.
Let's say 2 hours ahead.
The next person to meet
Yeah.
Riley has to ask her this.
I
okay?
will. I'll do
Exactly.
it shamelessly.
My head hurts now.
I regret
don't know
not
the
making
answer,
that my
but-
question to ask Lisa when
I
I
spent
met.
my whole life not thinking about that, and it would have been fine.
Yeah.
Can we talk about Ben?
Okay, yes. Thank you, Diane, for moving us ahead.
Sorry,
I
I
know
was
we've been
going
going at
through it.
this for a while. So moving forward, I feel like the biggest part of the book is talking about like the last couple of chapters, talking about her family, Riley, and then obviously the struggles that she faced after Ben's passing and even her and Ben's relationship. Anybody want to kick us off? Diane?
My tissue's ready.
Well, I think that Ben, like she had a very, I think you could see a lot of similarities between Gladys and Elvis's relationship and Lisa and Ben's relationship. Like she had like such a, it was interesting how like Riley talked about it and saying like, I don't remember how, like exactly what she said, but it really gave off the impression that Lisa kind of existed for Ben and like loved him. Like he was the favorite child. And she like, he got away with everything. And it was really interesting to hear how, of course, we'll talk about the grieving process, but like that family has a very like strong history of grieving, and like that they all went insane when somebody died, and they, were over the top, and whether it was uncles or cousins or Elvis himself or anything, like it was well documented that they all went a little bit over the top. But I mean, like it sounds like that's when she really gave up, like after that she tried to exist for her kids, and it was a fight she couldn't win. And I mean, I think that she had so much love for him, and losing that reason for living, it's similar to like Gladys and Elvis, with Elvis going overseas and Gladys just kind of like, drank herself to death. I mean, out of worry. I mean, I think it was a similar type of thing if she lost this thing and she just wanted to be with him. So there's a lot to unpack there, but it's so sad, and it's just like so heavy. And it's the type of thing I had to put the book down a couple of times, because like I've been waiting to finish the last chapter for the second time reading this book, because I know what's coming, and it's so heavy. It's so heavy.
I was thinking about when I was reading it, it's like that day it came out and I had class. I had to like go to school and do stuff. And then all I wanted to do was finish reading the book. And so I went to the library. I finished my homework really quick, probably half-assed it. So I was like, I need to read this book, like finish it, on that Tuesday or whatever. And my friend was like, did you even go to class? Like, how did you finish it? I'm like, I don't know. And I was sitting in the library and nothing, like, I mean, it was all pretty heavy and sad. And
but I didn't cry. I feel like we get desensitized, reading about Elvis dying, because it's like the first couple books about Elvis that I read and, reading about him dying, I would cry. And now I'm kind of like, okay, yeah, so I know that's, it's like I'm desensitized to that death in a way. Because I've talked about it and dissected it and read about it, but reading about Ben's death and like their way of dealing with it and just the trauma of it and all of that, like that is what made me cry in the book. Not like nothing else in the book really made me cry like that. Like I got emotional, but like I had tears rolling down my face in public reading this book because of the chapter on Ben. And I wasn't expecting that, I don't think. I think, I felt like we're detached from these people. I thought I would feel more emotional reading about Elvis's death, but then I was like, no, I mean, I read, that's a story I know, but this was something I never thought about in that same intensity. And, just as a mother losing her child, as a sister losing her brother, and, just all of that. That was just like the hardest part for me to read. Like just
talking about, I guess, like desensitizing is something that, like Tessa was saying, we've all read it several times. We almost become desensitized to hearing stories about Elvis's passing. But I also think like we're desensitized because we're so far removed from 1977 that it's almost mellowed out. Whereas like you're thinking like Lisa Marie was sitting recording these, we're talking like 2022, that's only 2 years after her son's passing. So I feel like for her, it's still very much present in her life. And I think it definitely reflected over into the passages that are her words and then those that are also Riley's words.
Well, I don't necessarily think that I learned a lot about Ben. I don't know if anyone else felt this way, but like they talked about their love for him and how much they loved him, like little things about him. But I don't really feel like I got to know him very well. But I feel like I got to Lisa.
We were talking about this when we just did the podcast episode about Lisa. Like, we were doing the research, and I feel like I have a decent amount to say about Riley, the twin. It's like there's not a lot of stakes. They're still young. They're minors. And Ben, like as big of a figure as he was, it felt like he was very lost. And that was like the only kind of sense of him as a person that I got from reading it, was like a kind of someone who was struggling to find his place, but who was kind and, overall good. And I agree. Like, I don't think I didn't feel like a strength of character necessarily from him that I was maybe anticipating, especially with, Lisa saying he was just like Elvis, in every way. And so I would be interested to learn more about him, because I do agree. I think it was more like they couldn't even talk about that because the grief was still so fresh. It's like
Riley,
that is how sad we are he's gone, not necessarily like
even Riley talking about the mental health struggles that he went through was so short and didn't really go into depth about it, that she said she didn't even know that, like, really that he was struggling, that it happened like so quick, was shocking to me. Just I mean usually with mental health, like we do keep these things like to ourselves, but it was such a short part of that story that I wish I could have heard more about him and his story and his struggles, and a little bit more in depth, I guess. It was
I wonder if with time, if Riley will talk about it more. I think because it is still so
right.
She lost him and then she lost her mother so shortly after. And like, I wonder if we'll learn more about him, but maybe it was just too painful to think.
Yeah.
When she said that part about how she had a question, and I don't know, I'm gonna butcher it, but she said she had nobody, she didn't know who to call. There was nobody to call. That like broke my heart to like think about her, for her.
It's so recent and so public, and both of them were not like, it wasn't just like, oh, they passed quietly, it was like very traumatic,
right,
public, intense passings that, like, I don't blame her for being a little bit guarded about that.
I don't know and sorry to cut you off, Tessa, but I don't know if any of you guys saw Riley's Vogue interview, and it's before Lisa passed, and she's with an the guy, also his brother passed to suicide, so they were relating, and Riley became a death doula. And she said, and she touched on it in the book, that she never ever would have been worried about him. And I think, and it said in the book that if he wasn't on drugs, he would have never taken his life. And I think, Skyllar, I think you're a One Direction fan. I'm a little too old for it, but I know that Liam Payne just passed, and he was heavily on drugs, and it's still up in the air whether he jumped or not. But if he did jump, it has been said, like, if he wasn't under the influence, they wouldn't take their life. So I don't think anything alarmed Riley with Ben. The only thing with Ben over the years that I've noticed, and it's like just obvious to see, is that any photos of him, he doesn't look at the camera. He always looks away, which I always found very odd. I don't know if it's a confidence thing or what, but yeah, it always just struck me like that. I don't know, that speaks more to me than anything, and it probably was nothing, but it comes off very odd to me. But Riley is not shy of talking about his death. In fact, like she says in that interview, I want to talk about him, like people, and if you guys read what Lisa wrote on her Instagram on one of the anniversary on grief day, or National Grief Day or something, she said, like, we want to talk about them, don't not talk about them. We want to keep their spirit alive. So I don't think Riley's trying to like guard anything. I think that it just kind of threw her off guard, and she really doesn't have the answers herself. It just kind of happened. And
guarding the grief, but I think, like Diane said, of like not getting a full sense of who he was as a person.
I don't think he knew.
Yeah, I don't think he knew.
Yeah.
But I wonder, it didn't. That's more what I meant, was like maybe guarding like that part. I think she's being very candid and open and honest and raw about all of those things, and processing it very publicly. But just like, this sense of it's difficult to get a sense of who he was. And I think maybe because he didn't know who he was, which I think I said.
Well, I think go ahead. Sorry.
No, go, Randy.
I was just gonna say, to me, it just came off that the most they could say without knowing him in person was that he was just such a special soul. Such a special human. And like, without knowing him, I don't think you could feel, they told us as much as they could without us knowing him in person, I feel like, and without him being able to explore his life and find his passions, and
well, yeah, because Riley has been doing her thing since she was 14.
Right.
She started doing modeling and like took initiative. I know he played bass, and like she mentioned, he wanted to cook and all these things, but I think also, like, he looked the most like Elvis, I think, than any of them. And then like he's the only guy, and so like that's like even double pressure. But I mean, we'll never know. We'll never know like the amount of weight per family member it bothered or didn't. But I think Riley's doing a phenomenal job with everything, all of it.
He's so strong. It blows my mind how strong and like put together she is. And Lisa raised like an amazing child, and I can't wait to just see where she goes. And I'm rooting for her. Like, oh my gosh, I just loved her. I just so proud of her. I don't even know her, but I'm just like, her strength. I can't even imagine.
There's an Oprah interview with Riley back in the day when Lisa was also on. And basically, Lisa is like, I raised them to not be Hollywood kids. Don't go to the clubs. Don't become a little Hollywood POS. I'm worried about the twins, but that's another story. But I think that she raised those first two to just not care about it. And like, they literally like grew up like reflecting that so much. I don't think they have like a little bit of ego in their body, and Lisa didn't either. Lisa was, when Lisa toured, she had tour manager Tyler, and I'm friends with him on Facebook, and I wrote like through all these years for like 20 years. And so I wrote him when she passed. And I kind of like wanted to hear his perspective of her, regardless. I don't know how to word it, but I wanted his honesty, like, because he really knew her, the human. And I think it reflects, those kids reflect the exact same way that Lisa was. And I'll find this in a second, but yeah, here it is. I'll read what he wrote to you guys. He said, because years ago he asked me for pictures. This is before, like, when I met Lisa, it was flip phones, like, you know, and there was nothing on the internet. And he asked me years, 5,000 years ago, if there was photos of Lisa with her security in 2010. And I couldn't really find anything. Well, I was going through Pinterest or something, and I found pictures that he's in the background of. So I sent it to him 20 years later. I said, I found them. And then I gave him the opening, like, what was she really like? And he said, thanks for the pics. I was with her and her family for about 6 years and got to know her pretty well. She wore her heart on her sleeve and was very much as she was when you met her, maybe a little more reserved and shy. She was a great lady with a big heart, and I had a lot of respect for her. She was actually never a pain in the ass. Well, at least not to those that worked closely with her and her family. I think she got a lot of the rebellion out of her system when she was young. I met many celebrities in my years in LA, and she was very different to the stereotypical rubbish that is all too common. She fought for justice and fiercely protected her family. Yes, we parted on good terms. I was sad to leave. He had to leave to go back. He's from South Africa. I was sad to leave, but I chose to move back with my family in South Africa when my mother fell ill with cancer in 2006. Lisa sent her a beautiful message and flowers from the US. I'm glad that you got to meet her and be a part of her life. She really enjoyed meeting her fans and supporters. So I don't know. I think she was like one of the most humble, like non-egotistical human beings who had every reason kind of to be.
She was extremely approachable too. She was extremely approachable, because when I met her, I like looked at her and I started like sobbing because I was like, oh my God, I can't believe this is happening. And I looked at her, I was like, I'm sorry. And she goes, no, honey, it's okay. You're fine. And I went up, not even asking for a hug, but I went up just like, because I felt comfortable enough, like putting my arms out, and she put her arms like around me and gave me like, yeah.
She asked my friend who I was with, I told one of you this story. I was with somebody that, and who didn't give a crap like about celebrities, but Lisa, like, I think Lisa may have thought she was nervous and asked her, like, do you want a picture with me? My dumbass friend said no, which was rude, regardless of who that is, said no to this day, doesn't have a picture with her. But like, yeah, I think she can kind of sense that about people, and like, it's just, yeah, she was just like an average, average human being.
But I think that like her dad, like he was the same way, like welcoming. Yeah, you just felt it was okay to come up to him, and he was okay with you coming up to him, and that's so beautiful too, to just kind of see they had that same kind of warmth and comfortability with people
and respect for people. It sounds
right.
No matter what your job was, like, you were going to get respect from them until you didn't deserve it anymore. You know,
that was the pervasive. That was the pervasive thing about the book. I mean, I don't know. I got the feeling like Lisa was Elvis's daughter in a big way.
Mm-hmm.
And she was in reaction or response to Priscilla. And Priscilla was unfortunately around to have that kind of clash. But otherwise, that was Elvis as a girl, kind of.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I told Kelsey, I think, when I saw you in Arizona, when I first saw Lisa, my mom was watching her interview with Diane Sawyer, and I was like, why do you care about these people? And I go, and I'm looking at her, and like, you hear her talk, and I go, Mom, this girl freaks me out. Like, that's Elvis. That's a guy. That's him with long hair. Like, her voice is deep, her face is him. And like, from then on, like, and just like her humbleness and just like how down to earth she was is kind of what started to draw me in, and then became an Elvis fan through that.
Yeah.
I think that like through everything, through even like the big elephant in the room of like her holding on to Ben's body for 2 months, everything, like through her grieving process. I know a lot of people say the book is about grief and is about, like mourning and all that stuff. But I really think that love, like it's her showing her love for her father, her showing her love in her own way to her mother, to her family, like to her children, and like the loss of love, like getting love. And I don't know, that's what after it in the beginning, when I first finished it, I'm like, this is the saddest book I've ever read. But then when you stop and you think about it and you realize it, like through that though, she was still putting herself out there, and she was still like chasing love and being able to give love. And I think it's actually kind of a hopeful book, even though it doesn't end how we want it to end. I think there's still a lot of hope in her story.
It was so human. It was so human. And so, even though I'll never understand that level of stature in life, I related so much to so many different stories and experiences through that book that you couldn't help but just feel connected. And it was crazy to me, actually, how many things I related to and empathized with. And it was beautiful, just how raw, and it was so hard to read, but I was so appreciative just of how raw it was. And just, it's human life. It's things we all have our family traumas and struggles and ups and downs and addictions and whatever, but it's just nice to be able to relate to somebody like that. And
I think that's the point. Yeah. It's like, no matter how big, famous, whatever, it happens. Like at the end of the day, it happens to them.
She didn't owe any of this stuff. Like she didn't owe. Like the other thing I thought about at the end of this, I'm like, you didn't have to tell us any of this. You know what I mean? Like you could have held on to this and like didn't have to tell the dark stuff. Didn't have to go into such detail. Like you could have held on to holding on to Ben for 2 months. Like you didn't have to tell us, but like she was so open with us and so raw with us. And like, I'm not gonna lie, I really didn't care that much about Lisa before I read this book. You know what I mean? Like I'm like, oh, that's like his daughter. But like now I'm like, I have so much respect and I have so much love for her. And now I feel like I want to defend her like so much. Like I just have such a care and love for her now that I've like read this and I see how similar like our lives are, or how, not necessarily our lives, but like the emotions and the feelings.
Definitely. The last 2 chapters were like extremely triggering for me and very hard, because my mom and my brother had the same relationship. My brother died almost 2 years ago, and then I just lost my dad in February. So I was just like, the last 2 chapters were like, I'm literally reading my life, but they're celebrities. But I love how that was mentioned in there that she wanted to like go around helping grieving parents. And after my brother passed away, because he passed in 2022, a month actually before Lisa, and I handed my mom the blog that she wrote about grieving, and my mom, read the part, and she looked at me and she goes, that's why I'm still here. Is like when she wrote like, what keeps you going? She was my girls, and then she still has me and my sister. And I'm just like, I don't know, like it's just amazing that like you're that big of a person, but you still want to help other people. You're not like some selfish person, celebrity, whatever. But
she never said who she really was in those grief meetings either. Like people didn't know somehow didn't know who she was. She held them at her house.
It's her journey of healing, and that is what you get from the experience of reading her book. There is a way in which she didn't get to complete her life yeah, but she did actually get to a point where she was working on healing. And I'm so sorry, Jordan.
Thank you. Yeah. And then like Riley being like the big sister, and like because I was like, Riley had to tell Lisa about Ben. I had to tell my mom about my brother. And it's just like why, like all these things. And then reading through that, like I gained like an immense amount of like respect for Riley. I mean, I already had that in the first place because like I knew like how well she like holds herself. during like this whole process, but it's just like it was very comforting for me to read that, knowing that like other people have gone through this and this is how they handled it, not necessarily getting through it, but how you handle it, because it becomes like part of your new life. And it's just
did you see the Vogue interview, Jordan, with Riley after Ben died before Lisa?
Maybe.
I think you'll like it.
Yeah.
I think you can really benefit from that.
Yeah.
I'll send it.
And I think both Lisa and Riley would be extraordinarily touched and moved by this, Jordan. I think that's why the book was written.
Oh, yeah. I know. I was like hoping that there's going to be like a segment where we could ask Riley questions. They were like, I don't have a question. I just want to say thank you.
Right. I hope you can share your story with her someday. I really do.
Yeah.
I think it'd be helpful for both of you.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think too, just and with grief in general, and especially with this family in particular and Elvis, it's like Diane said, it always came back to love, and the grief is so big and the tragedy's so big because the love was so big.
Yeah.
And real and deep and spiritual and raw and messy and all the human things, like Kelsey said, like that just makes the grief, more real.
Grief is the price we pay for love.
Yes.
The love's so big, so therefore the grief is so big. Yes. But I love what Riley had Big Ben read at Lisa's service was, "Thank you for teaching me that love is the most important thing in this life."
Yeah.
Yeah.
I think you guys answered one of like the closing questions I had for you guys was like, what does the book mean to you? What did it change about Lisa? Like, what was your view of her? Did it change? And it's something that you hope that other people take away from this. And like you all mentioned, Diane said, it's really a book about love. We might see it sometimes that it was all tragic, but underneath all, it was love that was there. Jordan, you're somebody who resonated with the book. And I think a lot of people, whether you're an Elvis fan or not, there's somebody out there who's going to be like, that was my experience. And for me, I think ultimately it just humanized her. It made me see her not as Elvis's daughter, not just some figure that we see in the tabloids and the news, but somebody who is a mother, a daughter, somebody who had real struggles, ups and downs, and that she had to find a way and was almost, I guess, on a journey to find a purpose in life. She talks about being a mother, hoping then later after Ben's death to help others with the grieving process. And for me, I think it was the humanizing aspect and just the journey to find purpose in life. And I don't know if anybody has any other closing statements that they want to like share with others.
I would just add to what you just said, resilience. That's
Resilience.
Resilience.
Like echoing what Diane said earlier of like, we weren't owed any of this information. And I felt immensely grateful to be able to read this story from Riley's perspective and from Lisa's perspective. I felt grateful because I felt like, man, you didn't need to tell us all that. Like, but you did, because that is how you lived your life, was just raw, heart on your sleeve. And it made me, I never really, like you said, I was sad, obviously, when she passed away, but I didn't feel like a super connection to her. And I felt after reading it, I was like, yep, I feel connected to you now, because I just didn't know her. And it was nice to be able, Elvis never got to tell his story. It was nice that she was able to tell in his own words, it was nice she was able to do that, and that we were like privy to be able to read it and listen to it,
It's her truth, and it's like, if I'm gonna believe anything, it's gonna be what's in this book, point blank, period. Right. Like, if anyone from now on asks me, oh, like, what Elvis book do you recommend I read? This one. Other than Last Train and Careless Love, like, next thing you should read is this one, because it is one of the most important. There's countless books written on Elvis, and who knows what is the truth out there, but I just feel like Lisa's story is so important, and the fact that we were all alive and all fans getting to be when it came out, like, it's been years, you know what I mean? And then, I don't know, it's just weird how like the timelines aligned a lot of us became fans, and like we're here to hear her story, and I'm just so happy that she shared it with us. I'm so happy that Riley like shared it with us, because we didn't really get to talk about this, which is totally fine, but like Riley stepped into the role of a mother like so early on, I feel like, and I relate to that so much. Like I just feel like when you're the oldest, or like the oldest daughter, like it goes mom and then the oldest, and then like you take care of a lot of stuff in the family, you're the rock of the family, you step in for your siblings when things happen, and like Riley has had to step into a lot like the past couple years, and I just think the highest of her, like truly, and she gave us something so special that Elvis fans have been waiting years for something like this to happen, and like we get it, and we get to be alive when it happens, and I just think it's like a beautiful thing, and I'm just so grateful that she told this story and did these voice notes like right before she passed. I think that's also crazy too, that she just started working on this and then she passed away. And I actually started paying attention to her when she passed, which is so unfortunate. It's so unfortunate.
Same.
She passed and I started listening to her music that day. And I just had this moment of like, why do I keep doing this? Why don't we pay attention when someone is alive? It's so frustrating. But yeah, I'm just grateful that we got to read it, and I'm grateful for this discussion as well. Like I think like this was amazing, and thank you, Megan, for inviting us to do this. Seriously, like, this is awesome. And this is like what it's about, like this community just coming together, being able to speak about this. Yeah, it's a beautiful thing. So.
Kristen and Jordan, can you confirm this? Didn't Lisa have a middle name that she liked to put out there in public that was Lisa?
LMFP.
It's right there.
Lisa Marie fucking
LMFP.
Right yeah, there. I kind of felt like that's what we got in this book. We got the LMFP in that she had the resilience.
Real wrong.
She had the wrongness.
Like
she had the intensity. She had the love. She had the heart on the sleeve. Like, I mean, she was just so lovable. What an amazing person.
She's like what Elvis wishes he could, you know, like he said things that like Elvis wished he could have said, but he was like couldn't, you know, and
it was a different time. I mean, she was not polished like that.
No.
Was her point.
No,
yeah,
he had a
Conan
big FU attitude.
On Conan, he asked about that moniker. And that's actually a t-shirt that's signed in its frame, but those are like, that's her merch that she made with LMFP.
Awesome.
I have a guitar pick right there that says LMF. It's her LMFP guitar pick. I have shit all around that you guys can't see. But if you guys like, YouTube takes down a lot of stuff. But if you guys want like the good interviews that go into Elvis and like just like give you a really good sense of not just her, but like life. I would recommend both Larry King's. I believe YouTube took those down. Just message me. I'll give those to you. Both Oprah's and
I've been trying to look for the Oprah's recently.
Yeah, well, you send those to me, please.
yeah. Those are really, really in depth, like to the core, like serious interviews, not just like, you know, hey, or Elvis and Thunder. But those are really good. Again, lost my train of thought, but yeah, that's cool.
I wish that she could have been here to hear the reaction of what of the book, and it makes me sad. It's kind of like with Elvis, like after he was gone, like you don't really realize the full effect of what they left, you know, until they're gone, and it's sad to. You want to tell her like, oh my God, this book, thank you for this book, thank you for being so raw and open about it, and it just, I mean, at the end of the day, it just really shows how you have to have empathy for all of them, you know. They all just went through this insane life that we can't even imagine, and I wish I could just like hug them, you know.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I was like, when we were in Memphis for the tour, I was like, if I see Riley, if I see Danny, I just want to give them both a huge hug. But I was like, I feel like they're just so like not off limits, but just like they just keep to themselves, kind of like
just understand all of them, and just it's I don't know.
I don't know if any of you think about this, but like of course, like I believe that we are so fortunate that we're living in a time where there still are people from Elvis's day that like dated him, knew him like personally. They're dying off, but I mean of age, but like we at least like have some part of it. So next generation, you know, there's not really going to be much other than what Riley has, Riley and the kids. But as far as like Lisa, okay, so Elvis had a twin, obviously died. And then Lisa is like his bloodline and basically is just his actual twin as well. And then we lost her. And then we had Ben, who was actually also his literal twin, and now we don't have him. So it like sucks because all these people died so young, and I felt like they were gonna be like what Elvis would have looked like if he aged, and like we don't have that. But I feel like we're very lucky with the pieces of the past that we do have, like these girlfriends or whoever that we meet at Elvis Suite, the band members, like these actual people that are definitely not going to be around long. And it's like crazy because like you think ahead, how long is Graceland going to be a historical thing where people are going to tour it? Like it's 3 generations now. Are they going to care? And there's not going to be like anybody other than Riley's great granddaughter. Like, you know what I mean? Like, it's just crazy.
But the love
Maybe
remains.
she'll be a superstar. Yeah.
And the love remains. Like that's what we're all here saying and doing. We're like loving Elvis. We're loving Lisa. We're loving.
Right.
I mean, it's just it's about the love sticking around. But you're right. Like we're in an era where we're really lucky that we have all that we do.
And some of us like weren't alive, you know, when he was alive, but there's still something that brings us to him and draws us in. And I hope, like, even for my daughter who's 11, you know, she's
the next generation.
Yeah, it's just like something will draw you in, and hopefully, you know, she'll be pushing me in a wheelchair up the driveway.
She'll be pushing both of us.
Right. You and me together.
Talk about that all night. But the one thing I do want to mention that we didn't talk about was the way that when like Riley was on her way to go to be with Lisa when she was like dying or was at the hospital, and Riley got to like peace and just say like, "Mom, you can go." I think that was like just a really good way to like wrap, like put a bow on it, because like, you know, Elvis went so violently, and like Lisa or Riley knew that she was on borrowed time with Lisa, and she just got to like very peacefully just like pass Lisa off, you know, into like from into the great unknown.
You have to go.
Yeah. You know,
Crying.
And
From
she was
here to the
God.
it was very much just like, I've got it from here. And I think Riley took it and ran with it and is doing a great job. So we're all, now it's our job to support Riley. And
Exactly.
So
Yeah. And I think we all did
right there.
There you go.
And there you go, guys.
Go. I know we talked about this like for a long time. But no, I just want to thank you guys all for like joining in, sharing your thoughts and opinions on this book. I know some of the topics were, you know, something that a little bit controversial, but I think we all kind of unite under the one perspective that we're very grateful that we get to experience Lisa's story in her own words from Riley's perspective. And I just want to thank you guys for joining, those of you who were sharing your thoughts, and everybody else who was just listening in to hear us chat for quite some time.
Thank you, Megan.
2.5 hours hearing us.
I know. But
Megan and I have our most recent podcast episode was all about Lisa Marie. So
we chat a little bit about it too. I think if you want to learn, I guess, the more factual stuff and like piecing that other than just us chatting, definitely look at that. But yeah. Thank you guys for tuning in and sitting down and chat with us.
Thank you for hosting us.
Yeah.
Thank you for doing this.
I miss you guys. I miss you so much.
Happy birthday, everybody. Maybe.
Yeah, see you at the birthday.
See you at birthday.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.